So morning everybody, I'm Roger Gribben. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone onto this webinar this morning or morning or whatever time of the day it is. If you're watching back from the recording, we're going to record this and put it on our website. As they say on TV, it's a recording, so the phone lines are closed. Please do not vote, as you may still be charged. But anyway, this is the first in our series of driving business efficiency webinars, helping companies get more from their investment in their IT systems. Those in general, it's all about streamlining, automation, taking the manual tasks out and any associated errors within those sort of key processes within an organization. So today I'm joined by my colleague here, Niall, who's been coordinating the event, and I'm very pleased to welcome Zoe Young of Draycir onto the webinar. So at this stage, I'll pass the mic across to Zoe. I was going to start to pull together an introduction on Draycir, and I thought, actually, do you know what? You're better placed to give it than me, Zoe. So I'll pass across, and whilst we do the technical bit of making you the presenter in the background.
Sure. Okay. Superb. Right. Okay. So I'm just sharing my screen now. So if you can just confirm you can see my screen there. Okay.
You can see that perfectly.
Fantastic. Okay. Let's begin. So thank you very much for the introduction there, Roger. As Roger said, I'm Zoe Young. I'm actually from Draycir, who are the authors of the software we're going to see today, which is actually called Credit Hound. And this is all focused against advanced credit control. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, first of all, for Draycir, because that is really important. We do work with lots of accounting software, but predominantly we always work with Sage, and that's globally. Credit Hound is one of the solutions that globally we have working with all the different flavors of Sage. We are actually a platinum developer for Sage, which also then means every single one of our products have to be authorized by Sage in order for them to be sold. So the connection between ourselves and Acorn are basically that Acorn are one of our business partners, and it's actually Acorn that you actually will get the software from. And Acorn are accredited to both install, configure, and also support our software. So you'll have me for the demonstration, then everything else is over to the fantastic team there at Acorn. So I'll just go through a few of our products first and foremost, so you can see what the suite of products is that we have, because they all sort of interlink together. So if you are looking for more of a paperless office, then we have something called Spindle Document Management. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because there's an element to Spindle Document Management, which is this area here, Spindle Document Distribution, which comes with Credit Hound. So there's an element of Spindle document distribution you'll have. There's also other aspects which will mean you'll need to buy it away from Credit Hound to do some other work, but I will definitely be telling you what those are as we go along with the demonstration. So just to give you some more ideas of sorts of software that we do, we actually even have a portal. So instead of your customers receiving emails from you for invoices, statements, etc., there is a portal that they can actually go to receive that information, which I strongly believe, as an ex-credit controller, so 24 years ago, that's the exact job I was doing. You know, there's always that excuse that I haven't got a copy of the invoice and things like that. So actually giving them access 24/7 is just one of many ways in which you can eliminate that particular excuse. But today we're going to be talking about Credit Hound. That's our main focus for today. Now, if anyone has got any questions as we go through the session today, then there is a chat window. I don't see that chat window whilst I'm doing the demonstration, though, so it may be that we take some of those offline. It might be that we can have a look at those towards the end of the session. Okay then, so Credit Hound, what's it all about? So like I've just said, you know, I have been a credit controller and I know how much admin is actually involved in the beginning of each day before I even start chasing. And general rule of thumb is it always starts with an age debt report, which means from that age debt report, I'll probably put that into Excel. It might be I even print it off. But of course, the first thing I need to do is find out who it is I called yesterday. So I need to transfer my notes across. I then need to check as I go along if I've received any payments, because of course that spreadsheet is only as good as the time that I uploaded it from Sage. Then I need to check the diary of people that potentially were going to pay me, and I've just got a diary. Anyone that's not paid, I then need to write letters, and so on and so forth. So before I even start my day of physically chasing, I need to do all of these admin tasks. So the idea behind Credit Hound is let's eliminate all of that manual procedure. So actually my credit controller is actually chasing, not doing all of those admin tasks. So that's the whole idea behind Credit Hound. And you'll notice today, as I go through the solution, there's lots of different elements to it. If you use all of them, you will notice your debtor day is getting shorter and shorter. If you're using different aspects of it, it will still definitely help you. But to get the full benefit, then you'll need to use all of the features. And that's the same with any sort of software. So what actually happens is Credit Hound stands on its own. So it's actually away from Sage, but there is a connector connecting the two systems together, which means if I'm the credit controller, I'll actually work in Credit Hound. I don't need to go back to Sage for any information. It's all drawn into Credit Hound. So I've got everything in one place. There's one huge benefit of that. That one benefit is I can have a bird's eye view of any account of what is only outstanding, because as a credit controller, that's all I'm interested in. But even more importantly, per transaction, I can actually see an audit trail for every single transaction outstanding. So I can automatically send out emails to chase people, or if you're not emailing, you're printing, it can print it as well. And this can happen automatically. Now, when I say automatically, people can get very nervous and probably think, now, I don't want to chase everybody the same, because actually I've got some key accounts that I don't want to chase, the same as maybe a bad payer, and that is absolutely fine. I can ring fence certain customers. So whether that's because I'm going to ring fence them because they're a key account and actually I don't ever want to chase them by email, I only want to call them, or whether it's a bad payer that I want to chase far more frequently, or whether it's someone that I never want to chase because of the type of customer they are, that's fine. We can set up Credit Hound to do what I call multi-level chasing cycles. And we can use either an analysis code from Sage to dictate who those customers are, or I also have something called categories in Credit Hound. So within there, I can actually categorize what sort of customers these are, which will dictate what sort of email they'll get and when they will actually get that email or letter. Now, I did say to you at the beginning, so that remember that piece of software called Spindle Document Distribution, which you do get as part of Credit Hound. If you would like your chasing letter to include the corresponding invoice with it, in other words, that whole excuse of I don't have a copy of the invoice, then you would need to purchase Spindle away from Credit Hound. And what would happen is you'll use Spindle in order to send out the invoice in the first place, which would then archive it. That's the important part. So now when I send out my chasing letter, it's going to pick up that corresponding invoice. So there is no excuse. They will have a chasing letter and they'll have an invoice as well. The difference if I don't purchase Spindle outside of Credit Hound is it will simply have just the chasing letter. And I will reiterate that when I do the demonstration. Now, this is the great part of Credit Hound. So as the credit controller, so remember the slide before this on what they would have to do before they even got to the point of chasing. Actually, I have a to-do list. And that to-do list just basically tells me who it is I need to contact today, which actually automatically removes anybody that has paid, or if I've got a task in there to chase a dispute, maybe if it's been resolved, it's going to disappear out of it as well. So I never have to go back to Sage to check they've paid, because actually all that work's done for me. I can even reassign my task to someone else. So if I was only working this morning and I was away this afternoon, but there was some important tasks I need to do this afternoon, that's fine. I can reassign it to another Credit Hound user as well. And here's that chase screen that I spoke about earlier. And I do think this is a real key area of Credit Hound. And I'll probably say that being the ex-credit controller, because that really is my bird's eye view. Obviously, if I'm always chasing someone, I'm going to have a very different conversation to someone that I hardly ever chase. And that gives me that bird's eye view straight away of what type of customer they are. So, of course, because I'm automatically sending out letters, it's important that Credit Hound knows when there's a dispute or a query on a particular transaction. So I can actually do my queries and disputes within Credit Hound. So the reason why it's a good idea to do it that way is because I can actually set up a rule to say, if it's in dispute, don't chase it. As soon as it's been resolved, then it can go back into the chasing cycle. So that's a key element as well of Credit Hound, and this is why it all links up together. Okay, so let's go straight into Credit Hound itself so we can have a look at the software. So hopefully you should be able to see a new screen now on your screen saying Draycir. If you're not seeing that, Roger, just let me know, because I've just had to change my screens this way. Perfect, lovely. Okay, so down at the bottom here, I can see my little icon for Credit Hound. So this is what Credit Hound looks like. This is actually the dashboard. Per person or per user, I'm going to see a different dashboard. Different dashboard because I might have set it up differently. You can see here I've got some extra widgets I can pull through and put on this screen. I can move things around. Also, why it might be different, if I have several different credit controllers, we might be looking at different ledgers. So for an example, I might look after customers starting from A to M. Roger might be looking after N to Z, for example. So I'm only going to see my customer, Roger's going to see his customers. If you look after all of the accounts, that's fine. Or if you've got a group that looks after everyone, that's fine. It's just to tell you what the difference could be. So some of this information is actually generated from Sage and some of it from Credit Hound. So something like the outstanding debt is for the customers I look after or all of the customers, and that's coming from Sage itself. Something like promised cash, though, this is coming from Credit Hound. So Credit Hound can now give me a forecast, which is really important for your cash flow. So this promised cash is, as I'm getting inquiries in and as I'm speaking to customers and they're telling me how much they're going to pay and when they're going to pay it, this is where I know what the promised cash is. And this is how I can start forecasting what the cash flow is. Mini age debt, important to any credit controller to try and get these values down as low as possible. And also my highest balance accounts, always a great idea to keep an eye on those. So what I don't want to see on here is lots of yellow boxes, for an example, because they're disputed. If these are key accounts, I want to ensure that these are resolved as soon as possible, and I can visually see that very easily on this dashboard. So the color coding in this section here for my highest balanced accounts, and the color coding on where's my money, which just shows in red either what's overdue, green is not due, disputed is disputed within Credit Hound or queried in Credit Hound, and blue is not allocated. So that's what I'm seeing on the dashboard. So the first thing a credit controller needs to do in the morning is come to this to-do list and just highlight on today's date, and that will give them all of the tasks that they need to do for that day. It's as easy as that, because all my chasing letters for today have already gone out. I haven't had to do anything at all. So this list just here, you can see the word automated by it. And in my example, what I've done is I've sent out 3 different emails. The last one is actually an automated telephone. Well, I say automated telephone call. You need to make the telephone call. It will automate the actual task, should I say. And that's why it says automated here. So that's automatically been generated for me. So I know these are the people I need to call today. You'll notice there's in the column type here where it says automated, I've got a callback at the bottom. So callback basically means this person has said they're going to pay me today. I know they've not paid me because it's still sitting on this list. If they do pay, then it will disappear off this list entirely. I will not see it. So I will show you in a moment how I can actually make notes and how I would do chasing from this screen just here. But let's go back a step. So this is the bit really the credit controllers wouldn't see because it's all done in the background. And that's the actual rules for the chasing letters. So I might want to do a few things before I get to this point. So if I want to do that multi-level chasing, I might want to say to Credit Hound which are my bad payers because I want to chase those more frequently than others. And within this accounts list just here, I can actually tick at the side here lots of different ones of these accounts here, and I know that these are all my bad payers. And what I can do here, I can actually do them in a category call problem. Now, you might have something similar already set up in as an analysis code, for an example. You can see here I've got my analysis that comes through from Sage. I can bring those through. Let's bring through that category column as well. And these are all things to help me try and chase, to make sure I'm chasing these particular accounts in a certain way. So whether that's using the analysis code or whether that's using category here. So now you can see I have the word problem by all of these accounts. So now when I go to the actual rules themselves, you'll see why I've done that. So I've got 4 rules in total. First rule is this preemptive email that I'm going to send out. So if I just press edit, you'll see how you can actually configure the software. So out of the box, it very much comes how you're seeing it now, but every single person on the webinar today will have a different chasing cycle. So you can tailor this to your own requirement. It might be that now you've got a piece of software, I might be able to give you new ideas of something you can do. So here, I've actually called this a preemptive letter. And it might be something you've never thought of doing. It might be something you're already doing, but hard to sort of get around doing each week, each month. And this is actually to chase someone before something even becomes due. So I can dictate from this transaction overdue here what period of time it is that I want to chase them. So here I can say, okay, I actually want it to be greater or equal to, let's say, 7 days before. The actual email I send doesn't necessarily have to be a chasing email. I mean, that's what it is to ourselves. But for the customer, it could be a complimentary email to say, just checking that you've received the goods, just checking you were okay with the service that you received. If not, please contact me as soon as possible. It could be something as simple as, did you receive the invoice? If not, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing your payment in the next 7 days or whatever the case may be. So it's more of a prompt for them. They've received an email from you. You are now at the top of their list because yes, I need to put them on my backs run, or yes, I need to make payment to them. That's that idea behind it. And it does work, believe you me, it does work. So I just build up this criteria here. So there's other things I can include. So here's your disputed one. If I've disputed it in Credit Hound, it actually won't include it. If I have spoken to them in the last, and this is something else you'll change, so let's say 9 days. If I've spoken to them in the last 9 days, then also it will exempt them from this particular chase letter. There is nothing worse than being chased for something. You've spoken to someone about it the day before, or you disputed it the day before. And that's how we can control who's getting these particular emails. The actual action is what you want to do. So in my case, it's quite simply, I've already imported a letter that I want to send out to them. So how do I send them out? Obviously, I'm going to show you this manually, because if I do it as part of an automation, literally these rules will sit on your server and you'll say, I would like them to run every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30, or you might want to run them every day, just depending on when you're wanting to chase. And you don't ever need to come in here. You do come in here when you first set them up just to check you've got the right people on the right rules. And to do that, all I need to do is press run, and here's my list. So to do that manually, you can imagine, would literally take a good, at least an hour just to get to this point just here. When I press OK, it will give me a preview of the actual letter that's going to go out to the customer. When I see that preview, all I need to do is send it to Spindle. So we're going back to Spindle Document Distribution, our other software that you get as part of it. If I just select Spindle Pro Auto, press print, and then that will send them out. Even though I'm pressing print, it doesn't physically print them all out. What I have in the background is some configuration that says, if this field in Sage has an email address, send it out by email. If there is no email address, then I want you to send it to the printer in order for me to post it. It might be at this stage for this particular email that you don't want, if they haven't got an email address, then you don't want it to be printed out, and you can exempt it from that as well. So let's have a look at what's actually been generated. So Spindle itself will generate body of the email as well. So as you can see here, I've got some promotion, I've got my logos, I've got fields that have come in through from Sage as well. And here is that actual letter itself. So the PDF will always give all of the information. So that's the letter that I put into Sage. The wording, etc., the format of the body of the email, that's all entirely up to yourselves to have it to look and feel like your standard emails are anyway. And as you can see, I have my email here. I have my invoice just here, the description of it, and also there is a copy of the invoice as well. So if I didn't have Spindle, if I hadn't sent my invoices out using Spindle, it would look like that. It would just be the letter. So out the box, just purchasing Credit Hound, that's what you'd get. If I purchased a Spindle outside of Credit Hound and sent my invoices using it, that's when you can have the invoice on it as well, which for me makes much more sense because you're giving them all the information, which means you're not going to get any excuses that they haven't got a copy of the invoice as well. Okay. So you can see all of my chasing letters are there. Don't be alarmed that they've all gone into my drafts box. That's only because it's a demonstration. In a real life environment, they will just go straight out to sent. Okay. So I just then work up my rules. So what is my next rule that I want to do? So in my case here, I want anything between 15 and 22 days. So the reason I've done that period of time is I'm not running my rules every day. So it's to capture that period of time, basically. The only difference here is I have put a new letter in. So this time I've got my chasing letter in there. So when I run these exactly the same, press OK, I'll see the preview, I'll select print, send it to Spindle Pro Auto. That will then send it out either by email if there's an email address or to your printer if there's no email address. If you don't have an email address and you fill it into Sage, the next time it will go out by email. There's no configuration change that you need to do for that. So the other idea for you for these letters, and again, everything's about getting paid quicker, is that you can actually put a pay now button on any of these letters as well. So if you're already with Sage Pay or even WellPay as well is another merchant that we work with as well, we can also put on pay now buttons within either the content of the emails you can see here, or just here you can see that I can do a pay now from here, which simply means your customer clicks on it. Trust me to choose one that isn't going to work. They just click on it, takes them straight through to the Sage Pay gateway, and then they can pay. So if you do take card payments and they have to ring up in order to pay, then that's a way forward for you as well. If you're wanting to do the same for just your invoices that are going out, of course, you can also put a pay now button on there as well. If that attached, there we go. So if that attached invoice is also on it, they can also click onto the invoice and pay that way as well. So that for sure, they don't have to wait for your office to open in order to make payment. So it's just another idea for you. So I expand out then to say, okay, if they still don't pay, so I've either got my bad pays that have had that preemptive letter plus the letter 1, everyone else has just had that letter 1. I've then gone out to my letter 2, and then it might be that I want to start contacting them. So that telephone chase list, that is exactly what you saw at the very beginning on that to-do list. So this is they've either received 2 or 3 emails, they still haven't paid, so now I need to talk to them. And that's exactly how I've done it. So for some users, what they will do is for their key accounts, it will just be a telephone chase. So they just need the prompt to say at this period of time, this is when I need to speak to that particular customer. So let's go back to the to-do list. So if you imagine all those rules are set up on the server and automatically run, that's why my starting point is here. So for a credit controller, they don't need to know anything that's just gone on because it's already happened. So obviously that's when they will start getting inquiries coming in, or they'll be actually looking at this to-do list just here. So if I just click on one of these tasks here, we'll be able to see the information I need to know, which is obviously what invoice it is that I need to be chasing for. If I had contacted these people and they weren't there or whatever, I might need to just make a note to tell me to call after 2 p.m. for an example. I can even put a message just here, and also I could reassign it if I wanted to someone else. So when I actually save that task, or what will happen is I'll see it going further down my list, and also I can see the task just there. If I wanted to reassign it to somebody else, I can also do it from here as well. So I could actually reassign that to one of my colleagues just here. And as soon as I reassign it, it will then disappear off my list, and then Richard would see it on his list as well. So that's totally off mine altogether. So depending on what I'm filtering on just here will depend obviously what I am seeing. So let's go back to this one just here. So I actually want to be chasing it. So yes, you can put all your manual notes and things like that in here. Of course you can. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So the screen I'm seeing is this overview. So this is all of the outstanding transactions for this particular customer, which is Festival Homes. In the center is the audit trail. So whichever transaction I'm clicked on at the top, that's the audit trail for that transaction. So if I click on the next one, I can see there is no audit trail. And that's also indicated by the icons I'm seeing on the right-hand side. So basically, if there's an envelope, it means that they've already promised me an amount of cash. If there's a flag, it means there's a dispute. And this little symbol here just basically means there is some history for this particular transaction, like this one here. So you can see here, that's the preemptive letter. So it's automatically going to stamp it on my audit trail when it goes out as well. So when I want to be chasing something, what I can do is, using this chase tab at the bottom here, I can actually put some notes in it. Now, this is also linked to the rules where it says, if you remember, I changed it, that if I had spoken to them in the last 9 days, I changed it to not send them out a letter. And that's because the credit controller has pressed start here and has also added a note here. That signifies to Credit Hound that I have spoken to them. So if I wanted to chase more than one invoice at the same time, that's fine. If you keep your eye on where it says amount promised here, when I highlight on more than one invoice, you can see it adds it up for me. If they weren't paying the full value, I can also just display on there how much it is they are going to pay. Let's just chase the one invoice for now. So I can add my notes here. If you want to do some analysis on why they're not paying, this links up to one of the reports as well. If you wanted to use that, you don't have to use it. When is this customer going to pay me? So they're going to pay me by next week. I'm going to leave it at 10:30 on my reminder, and that's what's going to go on my to-do list. So when I flick back to my to-do list, when I see that callback, that's exactly because it's generated from here. So when I finish this actual chase here, now here's one thing you might not have thought that you could do, is actually follow up with them. So thank you for taking my call today. You said you're going to pay this much for this particular invoice, and it just backs up what has been said on the phone. Because we're human beings, and saying something on the phone, there's no evidence of it. If we're backing up with an email, we have evidence of it, and that's why this really works. It might be they've just requested a copy invoice. And again, if you're using Spindle to send out your invoices, I could just simply click on here and it would automatically send out the invoice, even if it's more than one invoice, that is. What if I've called them and no one's there? Well, let's just send out an email from here. So these are emails that have already been templated. You may already have some of these yourselves at the moment, but it just means that Spindle can automatically send it out. And more importantly, what Spindle can do is then stamp that on the audit trail. So I know not only have I spoken to them and here are my notes, but also I followed up with this email as well. So in a moment, we'll be able to see that particular email come through to here. Remember, it will go straight out from your sent items. It won't be in your drafts like mine is just here. So the PDF always has the detailed information. So if I kept those 3 invoices selected, I'd see them all here. It also says the amount that they promised. So remember, when I changed it to 10,000, it would say 10,000 here if I'd remained it like that. And also whether they ask for a copy invoice or not, I always attach it just in case, so they always have it. So going back to Credit Hound, I've completed that task, so I simply tick to say I've completed it, and as with any to-do list, it's now come off my list and I just go in to do the next one. If at that point other transactions have been paid for that were on this list, they would disappear out of my list as well. Okay. Now, what if a customer phoned in and maybe they had a dispute or something? So going back to that original accounts list I looked at, I can actually click find and then click into Festival Homes this way, and I'm back to where I was. So now what we'll be able to see is the envelope with the promised cash they said. They're my notes I put in, and it already says that I followed up that call with my chasing letter as well. So if there was a dispute, it's very similar in that I need to press start, and you'll realize it's only because of the user type I am. It's only a full system user that can actually do all of the chasing what I'm doing now. But to add a dispute is great because I can actually filter on different disputes that potentially you may have within your organization. Let's say the invoice is incorrect. So this brings up a new screen. So what is it the customer is saying? So invoice is for too much, let's say. Now, me as the credit controller is not going to know what the order was, what it was promised, etc. So I can actually ask someone to check the order. So now I can assign it to somebody else. So it's not going to be me. I'm not in sales. I don't know what was promised. So I'm actually going to send it to my salesperson. And now what's going to happen, as you would expect, there are some templated emails, which automatically I can send to the customer, which is, again, something you might not have thought of doing, but also internally as well. Ordinarily, what I would be doing now is going to Outlook or phoning these people, etc., etc. But of course, because I have software, I can do this automatically, which is great. And again, the audit trail is going to show me everyone that's received these particular emails that I'm sending out now. So I've got a full audit trail. So this is what the customer has received. Oh, this is what the customer has received. And actually, within the PDF here, it's got all the information that I want them to see. So what they had said to me, what invoice it relates to, but also who it's been assigned to as well. So again, this is a great idea, and also giving that customer visibility of who's looking after it. So instead of them chasing me as the credit controller, they can actually go straight to the person. You don't have to display that, but it does work really well. Internally, then the salesperson has also received an email. That email will then show them on the actual dispute itself all the information they need. What did the customer say and what internal notes I've put for them to check the order. And this is where attaching invoices can work really well, because if this salesperson doesn't have access to Sage to have a look at the invoice, well, this has all the detail against the invoice as well. So if I just click back into here, we'll be able to see that that dispute is now got a flag on it, and I can actually see the notes against the notes against the transaction here, and also the emails that went out as well. When it resolves, that's fine. I can resolve the dispute here. I've still got the audit trail, and the really important thing is that's going to go back in the chasing cycle now. But I've got a full detail of the query that's gone on as well. The other thing you might have noticed in my screen as well is to put an account on stop. So it might be you want to incorporate that with one of the rules. So when you're sending maybe the last email that sort of puts the account on stop, and maybe it's going to be sent to a legal department, I can automatically put account on stop here as part of a rule, or manually as I have just done. That's the only thing that will go back to Sage as well. So that will now put the account on hold in Sage. If I want to remove it off hold or off stop in Sage, it will also do it here, or I can manually do it here as well. So that's another idea. So within the rules here, there's all sorts of different things that you might want to do. If I just press here, so we've only looked at actually sending out the letter itself, but you can see here I can automatically put an account on stop, I can change its category as well. So going back to the category where I put that it was a problem, you might want a new category called legal. Instead of going in each one individually and changing it to a legal category, for example, I can do that as part of this automation, as part of a rule. And then opposite from that, you could just run a rule that just tidies up Credit Hound. So when the account balance equals 0, if it's on stop, take it off stop. So what that will save is a report being generated to manually see these ones and then take it off stop. I might also want to change the category at that point, that if it's in legal, I've just got it into more of a neutral category as well. So you can also use Credit Hound just to tidy it up. 2 weeks ago, beginning of January, I actually did a demonstration for someone, and that's the one feature that they're going to use, because they put so many accounts on hold, on stop and off stop all the time, that actually they're just going to use Credit Hound just for that one functionality, because it takes one person 6 hours a week to actually do that, because it's really important that people put things on stop and not. So it's actually a water board that are using it for that. The other thing that you can use these rules for as well, which again might be something you've not thought about, but when they're nearing their credit limit or something like that, or when they're over their credit limit, it might be that you want to send them out notification. So now it's not really credit control, it's actually just advising the customer. So if that's again something that you want to do, you can use Credit Hound to automatically generate those sorts of emails as well. So lots of different ideas for you of what you can use these particular rules for. So as you would expect with any software, we've already spoken about rules, it has reports. So there's about 20 different reports, and you can actually generate your own reports as well. So there might be some of these reports that you see where you think, that's great, but I just want another field in there, or I want to remove that field. As long as the field's available, we can look at bringing it through as well. So back at the very beginning when we looked at dashboards, here's promised cash. But this time what I can do is generate a report to see where those payments are coming from, which accounts is it coming from. So it's a more detailed information, because it's important for me for my forecast. If that £24,000 for next week is coming in, if it's only one transaction and that one transaction may not come in, I need to know about that. So this is a great way of me filtering out on what that promised cash is made up from. User activity is another great one. So if you've got a new credit controller, are they using the software to its full ability, and what is it they've been doing? Well, you're able to see that. So here we can see Richard and Thomas, there's been no activity. Zoe, clearly a super user, has got all of this information. We can see she's putting notes into the system as well. If we look at the very, very bottom as well, we can actually see a very quick analysis here. So I can see the chasing letter 1. So that's the automated letters going out. The dispute notification, so I can see they're actually using the software very well, because they're sending up the follow-up letters. The follow-up letters after a chase are being used as well. So I know this user is using Credit Hound to its full potential. So the transaction dossier tends to be the most popular report that there is. And you will have noticed on the other reports I was pulling up, you can see there's all sorts of different filtering that I can do within here as well. So if I only wanted to filter on a certain aspects, then I can do. Just to show you what this report shows, a lot of people want to see what the notes are that people have put in as well. So this is the one of the reports that has all of this information in it. It's also one of the reports that is probably manipulated the most. So people move around the columns and add columns and things like that in it. So it's just to give you an idea of the sort of thing you could expect. The other great one as well is disputes, because of course it's all very well putting disputes in here, but let's do an analysis of what sort of disputes we have. So it could be that we just want to see what types of disputes we have, which is the one area where you can configure to have those different dispute reasons, which are going to be different for everybody on this call, going to have different dispute reasons. So here I can clearly see that actually we have a problem with some goods here. So I might want to look at the notes that have been put in Credit Hound to see what, is there anything that's the same? Is there a problem with my supplier? Is that why we've got faulty goods? So I'd be able to see that. But also, what about the disputes that have gone out to your internal staff? Let's do a report, almost like a name and shaming session. So this is where I can see all of the disputes, who it's been assigned to, and even how old that dispute is. So as soon as it's turned red, I know that this is now overdue. So it's a great report, so we can drill down, and I can just filter on a certain one person, and then I can email it to them in any of those formats, or I can just export it to any of those formats as well. So I won't go through all the reports, of course there's lots of them in there, but it's just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that you can do. Okay, so this is Credit Hound being used by what I call a full system user. But there are also 2 other user types as well. So depending on who in the business is using the software, it's going to depend what user type that they need. So I'm going to log in now as Richard. So let's assume Richard is my financial director. And what Richard wants to do is to come into Credit Hound to have a look, to run off some reports and see what's happening. So he will still see very similar screens, or almost the same screens as what I've been using before. The dashboard can be their own dashboard, but this time looking at all of the accounts this time. So you can see he's got some different imaging on here as well. He can still go into the account screen. He can pick out an account from this screen just here. Let's just click on Cook's Cookers, for example, and we'll be able to see the information. So the difference is that start button doesn't appear. So the start button is what would allow me to go into this chase screen to make some notes. So this shows you it is only the full system user that can do that, because it has an effect on the chasing cycle. I can add notes if I need to, though. I can add notes into this tab here. It has no effect on the chasing cycle. And you'll notice here on the audit trail, it now says who's actually done that. So that's what I call a BI user, or business intelligent user, ideal for any sort of management, etc. The last user, which is a real limited user, in fact, we've called it a limited user. So if I log in as Thomas now, so Thomas might be one of my salespeople, and before he goes on site to a customer the next day, he just wants to have a look to see what the status of the account is, etc. So this is a really limited user, and limited on purpose. So it could be that this is just displaying his accounts here. So if we go back into that Cook's Cookers, for example, you can see he can still click into here. Again, there's no start button, but once again, he can add notes as well, just like the BI user could previously. And again, it's just got a note on there. If he wanted to put a note on all of them, that's fine. I can put payment coming next week, for example, add a note, and that's actually going to replicate that same message on every single one of these. So it might be that I've gone in and done that. Okay, so that's all the different user types. So just to recap for you, that's the full system user, which is for a credit controller, a BI user, ideal for management, and a limited user, ideal for sales or even admin as well. So just to help anyone that's using Credit Hound, because I understand there are lots of aspects to it, and actually if you go to the Draycir website, what you'll be able to see under the support tab is some training videos. So these are really, I say training videos, are more like recaps, if you like. So if once you've had your training, you just want to have a little refresher, you'll see here for every aspect of Credit Hound, there is a help video for you, which takes you through step by step. So even if you have someone that's been working with Credit Hound, but unfortunately leaves the business and someone new comes on, this is exactly where I'll be pointing them to, because it can help them within their job role and using Credit Hound. Okay, so that's sort of drawn to the end of my session today. Now, if any of you have got any specific requirements that you may want to discuss, etc., then I'm more than happy to take any queries offline. Or I don't know, Roger, if you want to open up the lines, if anyone's got any questions, if you want to cover them off today at all.
Yeah, there's a little chat box. If anybody wants to ask any specific questions, feel free to fire it through. But yeah, in the meantime, thanks very much, Zoe. That was great, very informative.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Together. We'll just keep an eye. There's anything.
Yeah, we'll just keep an eye on the chat box. If you do have any questions, then just write on the chat box and we can go through those now whilst we're still online. Or if not, you can either go to your account manager at Acorn, or you have my contact details on the screen as well. More than happy to take any calls or emails directly.
Yeah, I think that's by all means. I'll send an email through my contact details afterwards if there is any separate follow-up, or if there's we'll just give it a second if there's anything coming through on the chat window. But I think, you know, the key bit that we get as feedback is you know, this leaves it, there's a seamless link from Sage, so it is one set of data, one version of the truth. There's no exporting and importing data into multiple systems. And the whole idea of the automated chase cycle, you know, including emails and invoices if appropriate, if you're using them out, if they're sending them out through Spindle, that whole idea of you set up a process and just have it run in the background is key.
Yeah.
So we have no questions coming through, but as I say, we'll get contact details sent out. If there's anything specific, by all means, pick up the dialogue separately. But all that's left is just to thank everybody for joining. Thank you, Zoe, for hosting it for us.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.